Hello everyone, I am back today with a spin-off of my most popular video, the twist sweater refashion. This time around I will be creating a dress using two men's shirts that I've had in my stash since I did the men's shirt refashion series. We have quite a bit to cover, so let's get started. Starting with the top half, I used the smaller shirt, which I tried on to mark where my waist would be using a button as a guide. I also placed a pin there in case I forgot. Next, I laid out the shirt nice and flat, then from the pin down I added allowance, stopping about midway between the buttons. At the midway point I drew a line, then cut. I took a little off the sleeves to make them a little bit more fitted and to reduce the armholes. To do that, I turned the sleeve inside out, then pinned an inch away from the armhole and tapered off the sides. After sewing my new seams, I trimmed away the excess before finishing the raw edges. And that was it for the top half. Moving on to the bottom half, I used the top shirt as a guide to figure out where to cut the waist for the bottom. Since I'll be making new side seams, I made sure to tack on a ½ inch on both sides. I then outlined the waist, then from there I marked my new side seams to create an A line. Now with the bottom half cut, I turned it inside out, then finished the side seams sewing a ½ inch from the edge. First, I made sure the waistlines were the same width. I then opened up both halves and pinned the waist together, starting approximately 4 inches from the button placket. When pinning, make sure to match the side seams. Once I got to the other end, I did the same, stopping 4 inches from the button placket. I then sewed 3/4 inch away from the edge, starting at one 4-inch mark and stopping at the other. It should look like this once you're done, or so I thought. Once I got to this point, I realized that in order to do the twist, the top and bottom plackets needed to be on the opposite sides of each other. So how did I solve the issue? I found the easiest way to fix this would be to switch the plackets around on the bottom half. So I removed both bottom plackets, cutting a 1/4 inch from the seams. The buttonhole placket had a 1/4 inch flap jutting out from the seam, so I used it as a guide to cut that side. Starting with the button strip, I flipped it upside down to attach it to the other side, which meant I would need to remove a button from the bottom and place it on the top. Taking the strip, I placed it right sides facing on the shirt, then pinned them together following the seam line on the placket. I did the same for the buttonhole strip, except I had to fold the flap onto the right side to pin along the seam line. You'll see why I did this in just a sec. Okay, so by doing this, the new seam would be hidden under the flap, so you wouldn't be able to tell it was ever reattached. Once I was done pinning both sides, I quickly buttoned the front to make sure they were positioned properly before sewing. To top it off, I pressed the seams and finished the raw edges. Now I just had to add another button closure at the top before moving on to the twist. Okay, so I went ahead and closed one side here, sewing roughly 2 inches from the center front. It really doesn't matter which side this is done on, just make sure one side is left open. Now, taking the bottom flap, ensure the closure is facing the correct side, then pull it up through the opening. With the bottom flap in one hand, grab the top one and place them together, right sides facing. Like the other side, pin and sew approximately 2 inches from the center front. And voila! Now the twist won't look as dramatic as the sweater because the shirt fabric is much thinner. So to punch it up a bit, I gathered the fabric by hand, then grabbed my needle and thread and secured it in place. Finish by closing the rest of the opening. I inserted elastic in the back to cinch the waist. Starting from one side seam, I turned the allowance onto the top shirt, then pinned and sewed a 1/4 inch from the edge, stopping at the other side seam. Afterwards, taking my elastic with the safety pin secured on one end, I ran it through the channel starting from one side seam and out the other. Once I got through to the other side, I removed the pin and sewed the elastic onto the side seam. I did the same for the other side after I adjusted the elastic to my liking. For this, I used the collar stand from the bottom shirt. First, I cut the stand in half, then folded under a 1/4 inch allowance and sewed all 4 sides closed. Here I went ahead and added a buttonhole to the end of the other half and grabbed a couple buttons from the scraps. Now it's time to attach them to the dress. With the sleeve turned inside out, I took one of the tabs and aligned it with the sleeve placket, then held it in place at the top with a couple pins. From there I sewed a square to secure it in place. Next, I turned the sleeve back on the right side, then grabbed one of the buttons and hand sewed it in the center of the square. Of course, I did the same for the other side, then put the sleeve tabs to the test. There was one more thing that I did in the back, and that was to remove the inverted pleat because I didn't like that it was bulging out at the waist. I did this method in a previous tutorial, which I'll link here for more details. Now let's move on to the finished look. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment below. Would love to hear your thoughts on this refashion. Also, follow me along on the gram for a sneak peek of my upcoming video, and I'll be seeing you next time. Bye.